Hey dudes, it's Lerald, and this is my baby budget, boss blasting, Pyroclast Polytheist Templar build for the upcoming Legacy of Phrecia event. Man, I wish Templar was named Paladin. The biggest selling point for this build is cheapness and simplicity. I guess that's two selling points, right? But cheap and simple. Pyroclast Mine is one of the strongest skills in the game at zero budget, league start, solo self-found, that sort of a situation. It's very easy to use, it's easy for new players to wrap their heads around. It is amazingly strong in the opening weekend of a league. The Polytheist Ascendancy is one of the weirdest ones that GGG has announced for the upcoming Legacy of Phrecia event. And I think for most builds, it's kind of a combination of a bunch of really interesting quality of life bonuses, things like Devout of Yugal and like Devout of the Brine King, that all add up to kind of nothing, but it is perfect for a Pyroclast Mine build. So we put out a video on Hexblast Mine Trickster at the start of Settler League. People really liked it, and the way that you play that character up through your initial clear through the in-game is as a Pyroclast miner, and then you switch over to Hexblast somewhere in like red maps, or even if you're like really a zoomer, you can like push all the way through tier 16s and in-game bosses as Pyroclast and then switch to Hexblast later, because Hexblast requires specific neeks to really come online, whereas Pyroclast does not. So just for reference, the video that I'm putting in here right now is of me in a tier 16 map on like a 4-link that's mostly doesn't even have like fully leveled support gems, so I think it's more like a 3.5 link with the wrong passive tree in it and mostly kind of bad gear, and it just doesn't matter. Pyroclast Mine ranks. It is instant offense like Lou Williams off the bench. The difference here is that because of this ascendancy right here, the Polytheist, there's really never any need to spec out a Pyroclast and into something else like Hexblast Mines, because it is so much stronger here than it is even on a good ascendancy like Trickster due to Devout of Lunaris over here on the right hand side, which is a notable that you're able to pick up in the second Labyrinth. So with that being said, if you wanted to play this build for the opening weekend and then switch over to something like an Architect of Chaos setup that's built around Vol skills after you'd killed all the in-game bosses, I think that would work pretty well. This will be like the Polytheist Pyroclast setup will be a safe, powerful league starter, tried and true, at least on the Pyroclast Mine side of things. And then you can move over to something more experimental and insane, like whatever Captain Lance is going to be doing with an Architect of Chaos. Sounds fun, but doesn't sound like something I would want to league start, because you're not even going to have guaranteed Vol skills available at the start of the character. So I don't want to start with an Ascendancy that can't do anything. I'd like to start with a Polytheist and then work my way into playing an Architect of Chaos later on. All right, Pyroclast Mine. Let's talk about it. What is it? Why is it so good? So it's a mine skill. You know, if you're just coming from PoE 2, you may not have any like real familiarity with these, and they are something that people kind of hate, historically have hated. I think a lot of the reason that people don't like them, it's a 2-button playstyle. You throw them down and then you press detonate mines and then they explode. A lot of that has been kind of sorted out in mapping with automation. Like automation won't work if you're in your hideout, it won't trigger detonate mines, but if I go into another area and I turn on automation, I can throw down the mines and they'll automatically trigger, and that'll work for very smoothly clearing out any area. Basically just turns mines into like any old regular build. Now for bossing specifically, because of the way Pyroclast Mines works, that we'll kind of get to in a second here, you don't really want to have automation on. You do want to kind of pile up a bunch of mines before the boss spawns and then pop them all, and that is a big advantage that mines have that no other sort of builds really have. This ability to just preload 20 hits worth of damage before a boss is spawned, and then press detonate mines, and then start throwing out mines, and just have them all be part of the chain, and then look, there you go. That's quite a big chain of hits there available to land on a boss. And this is really why Pyroclast Mine is so good. If we take a look at the skill gem here, you throw out mines, they do some fire damage, and then you have two incredible powerful lines here at the bottom. One, it fires an additional projectile for every 4 prior mines in the detonation sequence. It's very easy to get up to 20 mines, so you can get up to 5 extra proj by the end. That's pretty great, and you're actually able, as you can see, if I throw down 20 mines here, 20 mines, and then I press detonate mines, you can see that's a lot of projectiles by the end. But the thing is, if you keep throwing out mines while detonate mines is active and you're not continuing to press it, I'm going to press it one time and then throw out more mines, those new mines will actually get added into the detonation chain. You can see that was a lot more projectiles there in that case. So you can get significantly more than 5 extra proj out of some of the later mines in a sequence. Additionally, that final line there, each mine adds 13 to 20 fire damage to hits against enemies near it, up to a maximum of 661 to 982. This is something that you can scale up with the Mine Mastery and the tree that I'll get to in a bit, but that is a massive amount of flat fire damage added onto the hits with your Pyroclast mines. You know, we're talking about over 750 average flat damage added onto your Pyroclast mine hits. When you factor in all of the extra projectiles that are coming out and all of the flat added damage that's being added in, that is it. That's instant offense, right? That is enough to just take down high-level bosses on absolute shoestring budget and really have no problem with it. And that's why Pyroclast Mine is so good and why it's like so beloved. So now for the downsides of it. Pyroclast Mine is pretty easily available at level 28 as a shadow. I think maybe as a witch and a ranger, I'm not sure. But as a Templar, it's not. You do have to do the library around level 30 to 33, depending on how quickly you're moving the campaign in order to buy this. And it does require kind of a big changeover, so you do basically have to play as something else for the first like 30 levels or so. Technically speaking, you do have Stormblast Mine available as a Templar at level 2, but I don't really recommend playing with it, so for the first like 30 levels or so, I would just play the standard boring speed leveling setup of rolling magma, combustion, all of that stuff, flame wall, holy totem, all of the usual, you know, stuff that you would do on a Templar while leveling, clarity, herald of ash, blah, blah, blah. And then once you get to level 30, you basically want to pool up quite a bit of currency to go to Syosa and buy like a Pyroclast Mine, Trap and Mine Damage, Charge Mine, Support, and Swift Assembly, all from him, as well as Summon Skitterbots and Grace if you're able to, or maybe Haste, to be honest, just for like speed through the campaign. But you know, you're gonna have to buy quite a bit from Syosa, which is a little annoying, but you know, other than that, Templar is still quite good at speed leveling. And that's really, I think, about the only downside of this whole situation. Obviously, you'll have to buy Detonate Mines support, or Detonate Mines skill gem from Syosa as well, and be able to hook that up to automation. But that's really about the only real issue with this build, is that once you hit around like 30 to 33, you're going to kind of have a big swap over into running mines. But the positive of this is that it allows you to sidestep all of the irritating stuff where you're throwing down mines, you know, in the like first 15 levels of the campaign where you're throwing down mines and then having to press another button to make them explode. You're basically able to just skip ahead to where you have automation and detonate mines hooked up, and you can just run through areas. Pretty much once you've cleared the library, you can just run through areas and right click and kill stuff. And so just to show off how automation is working here, obviously automation and Pyroclast Mine have very bad negative synergy with each other. You know, it's spam casting detonate mines, so it is hurting that ability to get extra projectiles out of each mine that was previously in the detonation sequence. It's kind of interfering with the ability to stack up mines and get a bunch of extra damage. But the thing is that when you're moving through a map, when you're moving through any sort of easier content, it doesn't matter. And then when you get to a boss, you do turn off automation, you load up a bunch of mines next to the boss, and then you press detonate mines and it kills them. But for clearing through 95, 98% of content in the game, doesn't matter, just play automation, just move through quickly, nice and easy. All right, now let's take a look at the Ascendancy and kind of look at why it is so incredibly good. The first Ascendancy nodes you take, Devout of Ralakesh, you're getting minimum to all three of the charges. This isn't really as huge of a deal as it might seem, because mines make it very easy to get maximum frenzy and power charges, and you get a lot of bonuses out of them. You take charge mine support, so you're always getting mine throwing speed out of frenzy charges and crit chance out of power charges, which you already have crit chance out of power charges, so you're just double dipping on that. And you're generating a lot of charges. It's very easy to do. But still, 3 endurance charges is 3 endurance charges, and not having to build up those charges at all is like, it's something convenient. I think really more this is just kind of valuable during the campaign. And then, I mean, 3 endurance charges is 12% physical and elemental damage reduction, which is actually quite good. The real key here, and really the thing that drew me to this Ascendancy as a reason to build this around it, is Devout of Lunaris. This is essentially the Astral Projector ring, which, as you can see, Astral Projector here. It gives you less area of effect on your Nova spells, which Pyroclast Mine is a Nova skill. And then, you know, it gives you some other bonuses, but the main one is that Nova skills are cast at the targeted location instead of around you. And so the way that Pyroclast Mines normally would work is it'll cast around where the mines are, right? So if we move forward to enemies, I could throw down some mines and it'll cast them around the mines. So it's not hitting guys. But if we put on Astral Projector, I could throw them back here, and it's blowing up where the guys are. There's some line of sighting in this area where, like, if I throw them up the stairs or around corners from enemies, it might not be able to hit them. But I can miss, and it doesn't matter. It's still going to hit enemies. And that's exactly what's happening with this Ascendancy node. It's a huge, huge improvement in the targeting ability of this skill, where you don't have to throw it on top of enemies directly. You can kind of throw it anywhere within about a screen of an enemy, and it's going to hit them. And that's not all. There is the 2 extra projectiles line in this Ascendancy notable, which is completely crazy. It is insanely strong. Just how good that 2 extra projectiles is. That is so much more damage being added into this build, specifically onto Pyroclast Mines. It really is, I think, only very good for Pyroclast Mines. We don't know what the miners are, you know, maybe there's a bit of extra damage or something. Who knows, who cares? Then the other 2 Ascendancy nodes here really kind of make me think a lot about Saboteur, which is kind of an old favorite of running the Pyroclast Mine setup. And that would be Devout of Garakan, which just gives you like a lot of quality of life. It's evasion rating while moving, life recovery, and mana recovery while moving, which is actually good. It makes it pretty easy to make your mana work while mapping or just kind of doing any sort of content, because that is something you kind of lose out on. Like if I walk around here, you know, it's not too huge of a problem because I have clarity hooked up in this build. But if I don't have clarity, you know, I might be able to like burn out my mana potentially. Maybe not. Maybe my mana regen is good enough on this character. I'm not sure where I have mana regen in here. But in any case, the Devout of Garakan, the 100% increased mana regen rate just completely voids out any concerns about mana. In my mind, makes it completely easy to sustain mana throughout the process of playing the character. And then finally, you have Devout of Solaris, and this is another really good damage scaler. You get nearby enemies are blinded. That's a pretty good defensive bonus, gives you a lot more value when you're playing an evasion build, which this one is. And then it also gives you 100% increased crit chance against those people, those monsters, and that's just a huge offensive bonus as well that really interacts positively with everything else that is going on in the build, where we're just getting, you know, it becomes not that difficult to crit cap. And you know, then the final line, 100% reduced crit chance against or for nearby enemies, is not as good as it sounds. You know, if you're running a map that has like monsters have significantly increased crit chance and crit damage multi, this is only going to reduce that number by 100%. It's not going to zero it out. I think if this were 100% less crit chance or deal, you know, less damage with crits or something, that would be a lot more appealing, but it's still pretty decent. Like, I think this whole package is really only useful for Pyroclast Mine, but I do think it's very, very good for a Pyroclast setup. All right, with that being said, let me just kind of run through the passive skill tree as I would level through it. You know, I'd do my first levels, I'd come out and take Retribution, Discipline and Training, and Holy Dominion. Holy Dominion's nice because it gives you some early all-res and a bit of extra damage, and then I would just kind of start making my way over toward Efficient Explosives, because my goal is to get there right around the time that I'm getting to like level 33, finding Syosa. I want to be in this whole wheel here and taking efficient auras from mines. I'm fine with like wasting a couple of points along the way. That's okay. Stopping and picking up Firewalker is good. You could potentially take like Heart and Soul or Practical Application too if you want a little bit more life and mana or resistances and stats. Practical Application's actually like a pretty good utility pair of nodes to take while you're in the leveling process. And then from there, I just kind of expand outward, especially as I'm progressing into like Act 6 and beyond, taking some like charge nodes to go with the charged mine support. You know, all the charge stacking that's going to happen from that is going to be like a kind of an important part of the build. And then I just start building into this being a very fire damage heavy build, you know, take all of the mines, all of the mine nodes, all of the mine support, and then just build for like spell crit chance and crit damage, and suppress an evasion, and that's pretty much it for the tree. Very basic, right? Not super complicated, but you know, I think this works out pretty well. And then finally here I have like kind of a more end-game-ish setup. And so the reason I wanted to show off this cluster jewel setup is just to say that like mine throwing speed is a really valuable stat. There's not a ton of places that you can get it. You can craft it onto weapon prefixes. You do get a lot of it out of frenzy charges because of charge mine support. But that's kind of it. There's not a lot of mine throwing speed around, and this is really good. And then also the move speed after you've thrown a trap or mine recently is also just very nice. All right, now let's move on over to skill gems. So like I said earlier, you're going to kind of use a rolling magma and Flame Wall setup, and Holy Flame Totem can work well with that. You don't have to level like that. That's just like a pretty commonly liked leveling setup. You also don't have to switch over from Frostblink to Flame Dash. You can if you want. Either way, it's up to you. Ultimately, both can work fine. I do like running Clarity as soon as you're able to pick it up in Act 1, and then Herald of Ash in Act 2. Those work really well, especially since you're doing fire damage. Once you hit around, like I said before, level 30 or 33 or so, once you reach Sios and you're able to switch over to Pyroclast Mine, you're going to want to do that. Trap and Mine damage, Charge Mines, those are both really good. You'll want to buy Swift Assembly. You won't be able to get Minefield until Act 6, but once you get to Act 6, you can pick that up, and that'll definitely really ramp up a lot of the damage that comes from playing Pyroclast Mines. It'll still work without Minefield, though. You wouldn't be able to get Minefield even on a Trickster or a Shadow until I think level 38, closer to level 40. So, definitely not necessary for getting rolling through the rest of the first half of the campaign. As for the rest of these skills, you're running just normal stuff, Shield Charge to get around. You just keep Frost Blinking or Flame Dashing, whichever you prefer, as your other mobility skill. Skitterbots and Grace, those are just pretty normal auras for any sort of mine build. Automation and Detonate Mines, like I said, is really good. You can hook a Mortal Call into that. I think that's the best one to go after. You will obviously need some amount of strength to pull that off. And then you can pick up like Flammability in Act 3. In fact, I'll just put that here. You can put that in as well, just as something to kind of self-cast. And you can also get that from a ring. That's how I have it set up here, just in some kind of basic gear, like a Flammability on hit ring will work. That'll work really well. And then you can spec into Whispers of Doom, which I think I have anointed on the neck in the super decent gear setup. But putting like Sniper's Mark and Arcanist Brand together, that'll work really well. Sniper's Mark will massively increase your damage, but it is a mark, so it's going to be competitive with Flammability for, curse limit. So if you only had to choose one, Sniper's Mark for bossing is better, but obviously if you can get both, and it's really not that hard to get both, you would prefer to get both. So now let's talk about gear. As for leveling, going through the campaign, you're pretty much just going to be wearing like basic, whatever gear you can get that has like life and stats on it and stuff, resistances and all that. If you're able to get any flat fire damage to spells, that does scale very nicely with Pyroclast Mine. Any sort of basic spell damage works well too. Crit chance with spells is obviously very good as well, so those are all good stats to go after. The only other stats, or the only uniques I would really recommend running at kind of a lower gear level are the Restless Ward. It just gives you a lot of move speed. You get 4% move speed per frenzy charge, and then a bit of life regen per endurance charge, so it's, not a huge amount, but still some. And then a good amount of ES and evasion, like actually quite a lot of ES and evasion, but really the value here is just that you're going to get, like 17% move speed out of the Restless Ward. Like that's pretty good. I guess 20% move speed, but then you have the move speed penalty from wearing body armor, but still like 20% move speed is pretty good. And then Deidre's Tenure, these are just great gloves for any sort of like mine build, because they give you 100% increased spell damage and a pretty good amount of int. And then they have the horrible downside of that massive reduced cast speed. Really sucks for a caster build, but you don't cast, you throw mines that then deal damage based on your spell damage. So that's just a huge damage multiplier for what are basically one chaos unique gloves. I mean, you can see 15% increased damage off of these stupid crappy gloves, right? Then the rest of the gear is just kind of junk. And then in terms of like upgrading to maybe more big boy fancy gear, it's kind of, I'm kind of going with a sort of normal Hex Blasty setup. Still just wearing like a lot of rare gear that's not like super amazing. I would say like the main thing you would want to go for in a body armor, if you can get it, is like Corrupted plus level, either plus level of Socket of Gems or plus level of AoE Gems. Both are really, really good, and those can be surprisingly cheap on a halfway decent body armor. If you can get a Sandstorm Visage early on, this may be, it's kind of not a super available unique. It does come from Sanctum, but if you're able to get a Sandstorm Visage, that is something you can go after. And then you just want to go after like crit chance on the weapon. It's really easy to get super high crit chance on a Prophecy Wand now. They have very high base crit chance, and so being able to combine that with Pyroclast Mine works really well, because Pyroclast Mine, much like Hex Blast, has a pretty low base crit chance. And that really fixes a big problem there. Definitely not something you have to do, but it can work really well if you go that way. And then, plus level of spell skill gems is really good. And so if you're able to get this combination of Sandstorm Visage and some sort of high crit wand going, you could potentially get enough crit to stay capped even while running a Maryland's Fallacy, which obviously gives you an insane amount of crit multiplier. You know, we're looking at 760 crit multiplier while still crit capped, thanks to the combination of power charges and the Ascendancy. And, you know, not really surprising that that'll give you a lot of damage. You know, we're getting a lot of damage out of the mines. And yeah, you know, this is something that I think a relatively high-level player could be able to put together over the course of the first weekend of the league. Like, there's definitely some good gear in here, don't get me wrong. Getting the mine throwing speed, implicit, and, like, fire exposure on your gloves is definitely very nice. But at the end of the day, none of this stuff is, like, mirror tier. None of this stuff is truly godly. I think Sandstorm Visage might wind up being the most expensive thing on the list here. I also have a Mana Flask in here, an Enduring Mana Flask in here, just for kind of safety's sake. Mostly a holdover from the way that the old Hexblast Miner would play, but I don't think it'll be necessary, so I think you'd be able to slip in maybe even just like a Gold Flask, so you could find more stuff. That would be good. And then in terms of defenses, you have so many different layers of defense. Like if we just go, everything's maxed out here, big boy in-game gear, high-level stuff. You have pretty good defenses considering the shoestring budget of the build. You've got Ghost Dance, you've got about 3,400 life, you've got about 2,400 in energy shield, 3,600 or 36k evasion. You do have the damage reduction that comes from the endurance charges, which isn't bad. You got a decent amount of block chance. You know, obviously it's going to take a little bit of doing to get to 100% spell suppression, but yeah, this all, you know, I think is something that could come together pretty easily and be a very, very strong build. Oh, one other thing I almost forgot, the Mine Mastery that gives you 2% reduced damage to enemies near each of your mines, up to 10%. So quite a lot of damage reduction going on in this build, quite a lot of defensive components for what is ultimately a very boss blasty build. You know, it's quite good at doing a lot of damage very quickly on a relatively low budget, but it's not just a straight glass cannon. You will be able to map and actually play the game and have a pretty good time playing this character, and I think it's going to be pretty fun. All right, I like this build. I think it's going to be a great league starter. Even if you wind up doing something else, I think the concept is fun. The quality of life of the Ascendancy is very, very good. All right, that's it. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video and you want to see more like it, and if you want to support us even further, consider becoming a channel member. Thanks for watching, and have fun blasting. Bye.